Hello students, welcome to the lecture on foreign exchange, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand about early currency, describe about the hard and credit money, understand about procedure for obtaining foreign exchange, describe the market size and liquidity, explain the exchange of currency during immigration, understand the role of import of goods, discuss about export of goods. Let's start with the concept of foreign exchange. A currency is a unit of exchange facilitating the transfer of goods and services. It is one form of money where money is anything that serves as a medium of exchange, a store of value and a standard of value. A currency is the dominant medium of exchange. To facilitate trade between currency zones, there are exchange rates, which are the prices at which currencies and the goods and services of individual currency zones can be exchanged against each other. Currencies can be classified as either floating currencies or fixed currencies based on their exchange rate regime. In common usage, currency sometimes refers to only paper money, as in coins and currency, but this is misleading. Coins and paper money are both forms of currency.
Traditionally, foreign exchange trading was the dominion of large banks, central banks, major corporations, and big institutions. In recent years, however, it's become much more popular and accessible to individual traders, and there's a number of reasons for this. First of all, it's a 24-hour market, which enables people to trade whenever they want and whenever it's convenient for them. In addition, through online trading, you can do it at home. You don't necessarily need access to the big trading platforms that were proprietary that people used in the past. You can get all the key information yourself from readily available sources such as internet sites and business newspapers. In addition, FX markets are extremely liquid, and because of that, trading spreads are narrow, and that keeps your costs low as well. Just like with other markets such as stocks and commodities, prices of currencies tend to depend on supply and demand. The more people that are interested in owning a currency, the price of it goes up. If people are less interested, the price of it goes down. There are a number of factors that can drive supply and demand for a currency, but generally speaking, people tend to prefer currencies with strong, stable economies, stable banking systems, and low political risk. So a number of the factors that can drive interest in a currency can include economic data. Certainly countries that are growing quickly tend to see their currencies in higher demand. Another area is risks. Countries with higher political risk tend to see lower demand and therefore see their currency prices go down. Interest rates are also a major factor when investing in a country. Countries with higher interest rates tend to be more popular than countries with lower interest rates. In the currency world, the bedrock and the foundation is really the US dollar. The US dollar is known as the world's reserve currency, which means that most of the central banks hold US dollars as one of their primary reserves. It's also a major currency in exchange. For example, a lot of commodities are traded based on US dollars around the world. Because of this, how the US dollar acts has a major influence on how other currencies act around the world. And because of this also, the Federal Reserve Board, or the U.S.'s central bank, and their decisions that they make can have wide-ranging ramifications. Also, when trading in currencies, most of the liquid pairs and what are known as the major pairs or the most active pairs involve the U.S. dollar in some way, whether it's the U.S. dollar versus the euro or the pound or other currencies. However, when two currencies are traded that do not involve the US dollar, for example, the euro versus the pound or the pound versus the yen, these are known as cross pairs. Some of them can be quite popular, but not quite as popular as some of the major.
Let us now discuss the early currency. The origin of currency is the creation of a circulating medium of exchange based on a unit of account which quickly becomes a store of value. Currency evolved from two basic innovations: the use of counters to assure that shipments arrived with the same goods that were shipped, and later with the use of silver ingots to represent stored value in the form of grain. Both of these developments had occurred by 2000 BC. Originally, money was a form of receipting grain stored in temple granaries in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Coinage. These factors led to the shift of the store of value being the metal itself. At first silver, then both silver and gold. Metals were mined, weighed and stamped into coins. This was to assure the individual taking the coin that he was getting a certain known weight of precious metal. Coins could be counterfeited, but they also created a new unit of account which helped lead to banking. Archimedes' principle was that the next link in currency occurred. Coins could now be easily tested for their fine weight of metal, and thus the value of a coin could be determined even if it had been shaved, debased or otherwise tampered with. Now moving on to the next topic, we will study about hard and credit money. In pre-modern China, the need for credit and for circulating a medium that was less of a burden than exchanging thousands of copper coins led to the introduction of paper money, commonly known today as banknotes. This economic phenomena was a slow and gradual process that took place from the late Tang dynasty 618 to 907 into the Song dynasty 960 to 1279. It began as a means for merchants to exchange heavy coinage for receipts of deposit issued as promissory notes from shops of wholesalers, notes that were valid for temporary use in a small regional territory. In the 10th century, the Song dynasty government began circulating these notes amongst the traders in their monopolized salt industry. In Europe, paper money was first introduced in Sweden in 1661. Sweden was rich in copper, thus because of copper's low value, extraordinarily big coins, often weighing several kilograms, had to be made. Because the coin was so big, it was probably more convenient to carry a note stating one's possession of such a coin than to carry the coin itself. The advantages of paper currency were numerous. It reduced transport of gold and silver and thus lowered the risks. It made loaning gold or silver at interest easier, since the specie gold or silver never left the possession of the lender until someone else redeemed the note. And it allowed for a division of currency into credit and specie banked forms. It enabled the sale of stock in joint stock companies and the redemption of those shares in paper. Let's now talk about legal tender. With the creation of central banks, currency underwent several significant changes. During both the coinage and credit money eras, the number of entities which had the ability to coin or print money was quite large. One could literally have a license to print money. Many nobles had the right of coinage. Royal colonial companies such as the Massachusetts Bay Company or the British East India Company could issue notes of credit, money backed by the promise to pay later or exchangeable for payments owed to the company itself. This led to continual instability of the value of money. The exposure of coins to debasement and shaving, however, presented the same problem in another form. Each pair of hands a coin passed through, its value grew less. The solution, which evolved beginning in the late 18th century and through the 19th century, was the creation of a central monetary authority which had a virtual monopoly on issuing currency and whose notes had to be accepted for all debts, public and private. The creation of a truly national currency backed by the government store of precious metals and enforced by their military and governmental control over an area was, in its time, extremely controversial. Advocates of the old system of free banking repealed central banking laws or slowed down the adoption of restrictions on local currency. Paper money. A banknote is a type of currency and commonly used as legal tender in many jurisdictions. With coins, banknotes make up the cash form of all modern money. Modern currencies. To find out which currency is used in a particular country, checklist of circulating currencies. Currently, the International Organization for Standardization has introduced a three-letter system of codes ISO 4217 to define currency as opposed to simple names or currency signs in order to remove the confusion that there are dozens of currencies called the dollar and many called the franc. Even the pound is used in nearly a dozen different countries, all of course with widely differing values. In general, the three-letter codes uses the ISO 3166 to 1 country code for the first two letters and the first letter of the name of the currency, D for dollar, for instance, as a third letter. The International Monetary Fund uses a variant system when referring to national currencies. Local currencies. In economics, a local currency is a currency not backed by a national government and intended to trade only in a small area. Advocates such as Jane Jacobs argue that this enables an economically depressed region to pull itself up by giving the people living there a medium of exchange that they can use to exchange services and locally produced goods. In a broader sense, this is the original purpose of all money. The procedures for obtaining foreign exchange are exchange rate. In finance, the exchange rate, also known as the foreign exchange rate, forex rate or FX rate between two currencies, specifies how much one currency is worth in terms of the other. For example, an exchange rate of 123 Japanese yen JPY to the United States dollar USD means that JPY 123 is worth the same as USD 1. The foreign exchange market is one of the largest markets in the world. By some estimates, about 2 trillion USD worth of currency exchanges hands every day. The spot exchange rate refers to the current exchange rate. The forward exchange rate refers to an exchange rate that is quoted and traded today but for delivery and payment on a specific future date. Nominal and real exchange rates. The nominal exchange rate is the price in domestic currency or 1 unit of a foreign currency. The real exchange rate RER is defined as where P is the domestic price level and P note the foreign price level. P and P note must have the same arbitrary value in some chosen base year. Hence, in the base year, RER is equal to E. The RER is only a theoretical ideal. In practice, there are many foreign currencies and price level values to take into consideration. Uncovered interest rate parity. Uncovered interest rate parity UIRP states that an appreciation or depreciation of one currency against another currency might be neutralized by a change in the interest rate differential. If US interest rates exceed Japanese interest rates, then the US dollar should depreciate against the Japanese yen by an amount that prevents arbitrage. The future exchange rate is reflected into the forward exchange rate stated today. In our example, the forward exchange rate of the dollar is said to be at a discount because it buys fewer Japanese yen in the forward rate than it does in the spot rate. The yen is said to be at a premium. Balance of payments model. This model holds that a foreign exchange rate must be at its equilibrium level, the rate which produces a stable current account balance. A nation with a trade deficit will experience reduction in its foreign exchange reserves, which ultimately depreciates the value of its currency. The cheaper currency renders the nation's goods, exports, more affordable in the global marketplace while making imports more expensive. After an intermediate period, imports are forced down and exports rise, thus stabilizing the trade balance and the currency towards equilibrium. Asset market model. The explosion in trading of financial assets, stocks and bonds has reshaped the way analysts and traders look at currencies. Economic variables such as economic growth, inflation and productivity are no longer the only drivers of currency movements. The proportion of foreign exchange transactions stemming from cross-border trading of financial assets has dwarfed the extent of currency transactions generated from trading in goods and services. Fluctuations in exchange rates. A market-based exchange rate will change whenever the values of either of the two components currencies change. A currency will tend to become more valuable whenever demand for it is greater than the available supply. It will become less valuable whenever demand is less than available supply. This does not mean people no longer want money. It just means they prefer holding their wealth in some other form, possibly another currency. Foreign exchange counters markets. The foreign exchange markets are usually highly liquid as the world's main international banks provide a market around the clock. The Bank for International Settlements reported that global foreign exchange market turnover daily averages in April was $650 billion in 1998 at constant exchange rates and increased to $1.9 trillion in 2004. Trade in global currency markets has soared over the past 3 years and is now worth more than $3.2 trillion a day.
Foreign exchange market is also called the forex market, currency market, spot FX or simply FX. This is the market where trading of currencies take place. Participants in the market buy and sell currencies, exchange currencies, or just speculate. The forex market is the biggest market of finance in the world. The forex market is composed of investment management firms, banks, hedge funds, commercial companies, retail brokers, forex investors and central banks as its participants. In the forex market, amounts of money continue to increase as investors increase in number, making possible the market's incredibly rapid growth. Trillions of dollars a day is traded in the forex market. Trading in the foreign exchange market involves buying and selling of currencies. One currency is bought while another one is sold, and these two processes are done simultaneously. The cost of one currency is established depending on its comparison with another currency. To further explain, this means that in currency trading, two currencies are always involved, and they are called a currency pair. The first of the currency pair is named the base currency and the other one is named the counter currency. It is shown in the currency pair how much of the value of the counter currency costs a unit of the base currency. The base currency is the one that is bought while selling the counter currency. The foreign exchange market has started long ago. It was in 1970s when the U.S. was taken off the gold standard by the U.S. President Nixon. It was at that time when the currencies of the world began to fluctuate. The U.S. government is now the one who backs the currency instead of gold. The market was opened to public retail in 1990s. Most of the market participants started to become established in the currency market by the year 2000. In the past, only the banks and large institutions, considered the big boys, can participate in the forex market, throwing around 10 to 50 millions of dollars every day as they play in the forex market. But with the beginning of the computer and internet age, the forex market retail is now open to public who are permitted to trade amounts, small or large, that they can handle.
The foreign exchange market is unique because of its trading volumes, the extreme liquidity of the market, the large number of and variety of traders in the market, its geographical dispersion, its long trading hours, 24 hours a day except on weekends, the variety of factors that affect exchange rates, the low margins of profit compared with other markets of fixed income, but profits can be high due to very large trading volumes. In addition to traditional turnover, $2.1 trillion was traded in derivatives. Exchange-traded forex futures contracts were introduced in 1972 at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and are actively traded relative to most other futures contracts. Forex futures volume has grown rapidly in recent years and accounts for about 7% of the total foreign exchange market value. Average daily global turnover in traditional foreign exchange market transactions totaled $2.7 trillion in April 2006, according to IFSL estimates based on semi-annual London, New York, Tokyo and Singapore Foreign Exchange Committee data. Overall turnover, including non-traditional foreign exchange derivatives and products traded on exchanges, averaged around $2.9 trillion a day. This was more than 10 times the size of the combined daily turnover on all the world's equity markets. Foreign exchange trading increased by 38% between April 2005 and April 2006 and has more than doubled since 2001. Market participants, unlike a stock market where all participants have access to the same prices, the forex market is divided into levels of access. At the top is the interbank market, which is made up of the largest investment banking firms. Within the interbank market, spreads, which are the difference between the bid and ask prices, are razor sharp and usually unavailable and not known to players outside the inner circle. Banks. The interbank market caters for both the majority of commercial turnover and large amounts of speculative trading every day. A large bank may trade billions of dollars daily. Some of this trading is undertaken on behalf of customers, but much is conducted by proprietary desks trading for the bank's own account. Investment management firms. Investment management firms, who typically manage large accounts on behalf of customers such as pension funds and endowments, use the foreign exchange market to facilitate transactions in foreign securities. There is no unified or centrally cleared market for the majority of FX trades, and there is very little cross-border regulation. Due to the over-the-counter OTC nature of currency markets, there are rather a number of interconnected marketplaces where different currency instruments are traded. This implies that there is not a single dollar rate, but rather a number of different rates, prices, depending on what bank or market maker is trading. In practice, the rates are often very close, otherwise they could be exploited by arbitrageurs instantaneously. A joint venture of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and Reuters called FX Market Space opened in 2007 and aspires to the role of a central market clearing mechanism. The main trading centers are in London, New York, Tokyo, Hong Kong and Singapore, but banks throughout the world participate. Currency trading happens continuously throughout the day. As the Asian trading session ends, the European session begins, followed by the North American session, and then back to the Asian session, excluding weekends. Financial instruments. The instruments are spot. A spot transaction is a two-day delivery transaction as opposed to the futures contracts, which are usually 3 months. This trade represents a direct exchange between two currencies, has the shortest time frame, involves cash rather than a contract, and interest is not included in the agreed upon transaction. The data of this study come from the spot market. Spot has the largest share by volume in FX transactions among all instruments. Forward. One way to deal with forex risk is to exchange in a forward transaction. In this transaction, money does not actually change hands until some agreed upon future date. A buyer and seller agree on an exchange rate for any date in the future, and the transaction occurs on that date, regardless of what the market rates are then. The duration of the trade can be a few days, months or years. Foreign visitors are entitled to import into country without payment of customs duty and other charges, articles for their personal use while on a trip, personal luggage, regardless of whether these items are carried with them or transported by a carrier. Articles considered to serve for the personal use of travelers coming from abroad are clothes, shoes, toiletries, etc. in quantities needed by the traveler concerned in view of his or her occupation, season, purpose of trip, duration and other circumstances of the trip and stay in country. Foreign nationals are entitled to export from country also items not intended for trade if the export of these items is not banned by the law or if no export license issued by the competent authorities is required for the export of such goods. Items of archaeological, historical or ethnographic value, works of art and other items having scientific or cultural significance, for example gold coins, paintings, antiquities, hunting trophies, may only be exported if an export license has been issued by the competent authorities. Relevant information may be obtained from the city or airport customs officers, bringing money into and taking it out of the country. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learnt in this lecture. It is important to note that a monetary authority is created and supported by its sponsoring government, so independence can be reduced or revoked by the legislative or executive authority that creates it. Currency evolved from two basic innovations: the use of counters to assure that shipments arrived with the same goods that were shipped, and later with the use of silver ingots to represent stored value in the form of grain. The exposure of coins to debasement and shaving, however, presented the same problem in another form. Each pair of hands a coin passed through, its value grew less. The spot exchange rate refers to the current exchange rate. The forward exchange rate refers to an exchange rate that is quoted and traded today, but for delivery and payment on a specific future date. Several large companies issue points to their customers to be redeemed for products and services produced by that company. Often, a network of companies will join to share in the offering and redemption of points.